Hi guys, it's Ray here from City Fan TV. Hope you're all doing very, very well indeed. Today, I'm going to talk about finances, football finances, FFP. Well, in this case, in this context, it's going to be PSR, Profits and Sustainability Rules, because they're in the news at the moment with respect to Newcastle. So I'm going to look at what's going on there and see how that is different to what happened at Manchester City. Now, when I was chatting with Bernard a few days ago, when we were looking at we do the preview for the Newcastle versus Manchester City Premier League game, I touched on some of this PSR, profit and sustainability rules, and went through some stuff there. But I thought it's worth doing a longer video looking at that, and as I said, how City was different and why. I've said it before. I think it's a con. This FFP. I think it's unfair on clubs that want to challenge financially the big boys, and why they're artificially being held back. Now, guys, if you are new to the channel, please think about subscribing. We do a lot of stuff, obviously, on Manchester City. It's a Manchester City fan channel. We do lots of stuff like previews and reviews, and transfer talk when there's something worth talking about. And an important part of the channel is the financial stuff we talk about. I used to be, for my sins, an accountant. I qualified back in 1995. Gives you an idea how old I am. So a long time ago. I used to be a chartered tax advisor as well. I qualified in that. I think it was in 1999. So long time working in finances. My background is I ran my own business, and now I do the YouTube stuff. I work in theatres as well. So that's my background. But initially, a lot of years in audit, internal audit, finance, tax, and other stuff like that. So I've forgotten a lot of it, but I can still remember, hopefully enough to get us through this video. Now, FFP. Now, briefly, FFP, Financial Fair Play, it's a con job. It was brought in basically, the premise was that it was going to stop clubs going bankrupt, especially the small clubs. It didn't work. They went bankrupt because it only looks at your profit and loss. It never looks at your balance sheet. Lots of stuff goes on your balance sheet, and it's important to look at what's going on there. So it's not stopped, let's say, some of the smaller clubs going out of business. We saw problems with Macclesfield, Bolton, Oldham, Rochdale. We've seen other clubs going out of business, Bury. And this is just the Northwest. It's happened elsewhere as well. FFP doesn't stop that happening. What FFP does do, and the PSR, Profit and Sustainability Rules, what they do is stop clubs competing with the ones who've already got the money. If you've already got the big money, you're the ones who can spend big on transfer fees. You're the ones who can spend big on wages. Okay, when you look at someone like Newcastle, and I don't know what their last turnover was. Let's say it's 200 and odd million pounds. Okay, when you compare that to someone like Liverpool, who is 600 and odd million, or Manchester City, who are 700 million. This is, I think, in pounds it was. They can't compete. They can't compete on what you would say is a level playing field. I'm just going to see if I can pull out the numbers. Newcastle's, okay, this is the last Deloitte. I'm looking at the Deloitte's thing. I'll do a video about Deloitte's, the top 20 clubs another time. Newcastle's turnover was 212.3 million euros. Liverpool's is 701.7 million euros. Man City's 731 million euros. City's has gone up since then. This was the previous year's accounts, but this is the last Deloitte's Money League that was out. City's current one is best part of 800 million euros, 712.8 million pounds, I think it was, which is probably over 800 million euros. I've done a video in the past saying City will be the first club that turns over €1 billion. Mark my words, I'm pretty sure that's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years, probably 2 years. But you can go and check my videos on that. So Newcastle, they can all, okay, it's not about spending just what you earn. FFP and the PSR allow you other expenditures where you can spend stuff on capital expenditure, developing your ground, charities and stuff, and other bits and pieces, which are excluded from this. So you can spend a bit more money. You can make losses, but they've got to be the idea is sustainable, affordable. There's a limit to what you can make. I can't remember all the numbers. FFP used to be, I think, about 50 million euros a year over a 3-year period. About 50 million loss was acceptable over a 3-year period, something like that. Okay. So Newcastle, look, they're owned by people who are wealthier than Manchester City's owner, Sheikh Mansour. But they can't spend that money because of the PSR, okay, the profit and sustainability rules, which, for want of a better way of looking at it, let's say you can only spend what you earn. You can, as I say, you can spend a bit more. But that's how we make it easier to consider. Okay, so they're only allowed, for argument's sake, to spend 200 million euros. City can spend 700 million. Okay, as I said, City, Liverpool, United, the other clubs with huge turnovers, they're in the things like the Champions League. Okay, all right, Newcastle got in it for this season. They won't be in there next season. But the Champions League's worth for City, it was over 100 million pounds. Okay, so this is money that your smaller club can't get, and the gap between big and small, or the ones who are in the most and the ones who aren't in the Premier League, is vast. As I said, Newcastle, they are, I think, 10th or 11th in terms of income in the Premier League, or they were the year before. Okay, they're 10th or 11th with 200 million euros turnover. City, 800 million now. All right, Newcastle's will go up in the next set of accounts because of the new sponsors, and next year they'll go up again because of the Champions League and all these bits and pieces. But I'm only looking at the last Deloitte's list that went out. So Newcastle are mid-table in terms of, if you make a list of all the 20 clubs in the Premier League, I think they're 11th in terms of turnover. So a lot of clubs who are earning a lot less. Bournemouth, tiny ground of about, was it 11,500 fans? Their shirt kit deal is nothing like, I suspect their kit deal will be well under 10 million, but Liverpool's is about 70, 80 million or whatever. These massive disparity in earnings, okay? So you can't compete on a level financial footing with these other clubs because of financial fair play. You haven't got the money initially to compete, and if your owners are rich enough who could pump money in, they're not allowing you to pump money in. They're not allowing you to pump money in as an investment, really. I think in the first year you can put a bit of extra in, but you've got to find creative ways, like Chelsea are doing, creative ways of being able to buy players. Chelsea have been lucky. They've got a ton of money coming in anyway, and they put the players on ridiculously long contracts. Now, I'll briefly tell you about this amortization, which is, to you and me, it's like depreciation. How much something loses its value. When you buy a player, let's say we bought Jack Grealish, £100 million, and he's on a 5-year contract. Now, that doesn't hit your profit and loss account, which is what FFP, PSR are looking at. That's where their focus is. Straight away, they amortize it, or basically depreciate it, over the life of his contract. Now, his contract is 5 years. So every year, only 20 million hits your accounts. That's 100 divided by 5. Pretty straightforward. Okay. And then his wages, obviously, let's say he's on 200 grand a week, 10 million a year. So for buying Jack Grealish, our accounts are impacted by 30 million pounds a year. Forget about the cash flow, which you need to spend money to buy Jack Grealish. Most clubs are generally buying it on using the debt. Basically, they have a loan, and they'll borrow money to be able to buy, and they're paying installments. That's the word I was looking for. They're paying in installments. So they might be paying, Arsenal will be like paying for, what's his name, Pepe, about, I think they did it over 4 years or something ridiculous. So you can pay it by in installments. So let's not worry about the cash flow. Let's focus on the profit and loss. So Jack Grealish is, for argument's sake, my numbers, hitting City at 30 million quid a year. Now, the way City get around this, City's finances are such that we can afford that. Where Newcastle is struggling, because they've made a lot of investment in a short space of time. They bought a lot of players. Bruno Guimaraes, Isak, Botman, just to name 3 recent signings. I don't think Botman was too expensive, but Isak was plenty money. Guimaraes was plenty money. Those 2 kind of stick in my head. There was plenty of money spent on them. Now, Newcastle's problem is they haven't got enough income. And what's going on at the moment, they're looking at selling players. That's the talk at the moment. And even Eddie Howe said we're going to have to be, working the transfer market. We're going to have to be, what would you call it? They're going to have to be transfer savvy. I think that's a way of looking at it. So they need to do some player trading, some wheeler dealing to make this work. Now, How does this work? Okay, why are they looking at potentially selling some star players? And I'm going to look at how you can get around selling your star players. Now, when you sell a player, you can make a profit or a loss in your accounts. This is accounting profit or loss, okay? And that hits your accounts immediately. So let's look at Jack Grealish as an example. City bought him for £100 million. Let's say he's played 2 seasons for City. We amortized him at 20 million a year over 5 years, 20 million a year. Let's say we sell him this summer after 3 years of amortization. His value in our accounts is 100 million, less than 20 million for the first year, less 20 million for the second year, less 20 million for the third year. For argument's sake, we sell him after 3 years. He's worth in our books 40 million. If we sell him for 50 million, we'll make a notional profit of 10 million pounds in our accounts. If we sell him for 20 million, we'll make a loss of 40 minus 20, a loss of 20 million in our accounts. And it hits your accounts in the year that the player is sold. So one way to get around the FFP issues that you have is to sell players. But you have to make sure you sell them at a profit. Now, I'll use Bruno Guimaraes as an example. I think he's got a buyout clause in his contract, or a release clause. It's rumoured to be at least £100 million. Don't know exactly how much Newcastle paid for Bruno Guimaraes. I'm going to have a quick look for you. So they would have paid, I think they paid about 40 million. That's up to 40 million. Okay. Now, this is his, second year. He bought him in January last year. So he's been here 2 years. So if they sell him, for argument's sake, they sell him in the summer, okay? He'll have been here for 2.5 years. He's on a 4.5-year deal. So he'll have lost half his value. He'd be worth about, let's say, 18 million quid. If they sell him for 100 million pounds, in your accounts, that is a profit of 100 minus his value in the summer is 18. They'll make an 82 million pound profit on his sale. Okay, it's not cash profit, it's accounting profit. That will allow them to go and do a lot of spending. Okay, a lot of spending. And it's not that they can go and spend 82 million pounds on players. No. Okay, if they make, let's make it easier, 80 million pound profit on the sale of Bruno Guimaraes. What that means is, for the next year anyway, they could go out and buy 2 players for 60 million quid each. That's 120 million in total. Put them on 5-year contracts. So 120 divided by 5 is 24 million pounds. It will hit their accounts at 24 million pounds a season. Let's say they paid them 15 million quid a year each, 300 grand each. Okay, that's 30. So it's going to hit them for 30 plus 24, 54 million pounds. It's going to hit their accounts. 2 players on 300 grand a week, who you spent 60 million quid on. Next set of accounts, it hits you for 54 million pounds. Well, you sold Bruno Guimaraes with a profit of 80 million pounds. Hey guys, hopefully that thumb icon's come up. Give us a like. But you sold Bruno Guimaraes for a book profit of 80 million. You've got new expenses of 54 million. You'll save his wages. Let's say his wages were 10 million a year. So that's going to have an impact on you for the following year. You'll save that 10 million. But your books are looking very good, actually, because you sold Bruno Guimaraes for that sort of money. And you bought these players in. And overall, in your accounts, it's looking good. But that means every year keep those 2 players, you've got to still, if you're not making a lot more money from TV deals, sponsorship and match day income, you've got to keep making those profits on sale of players until your income is at such a level that you can get by without having to selling your star players. So one way for Newcastle to get around this problem is to sell a star player. Another way, and it's the way Manchester City do it, another way to get around it is by selling academy products. Now, your academy products have come through the system. Most of them have cost you nothing. If they're local lads, they've cost you now, probably. City do spend a bit of money occasionally on academy products, but it's not going to be too much. I think there was Finley Gorman. I think they're going to spend, was it 1.5 million quid? I can't remember the numbers, but on him, which is a record for a kid his age for City. So basically, let's say they virtually cost you nothing to get them. Okay, and then we sell them. Look at Cole Palmer. I use Cole Palmer as a very good example. It costs us nothing to get Cole Palmer. We're selling him, let's say it was 45 million quid. In our accounts, his value is zero. We sold him for 45 million quid. Our accounts benefit by 45 million pounds. It's a profit on the sale of a player. That really helps us with FFP. Now, I've done numbers over every year for the last few years, and I've said, roughly speaking, we're making at least 50 million quid a year now on the sale of our academy products. You can go back, I can't remember them all, but we sold loads of players, okay? A lot to Southampton. In the past, we sold Angus Gunn to Southampton. We sold Gavin Bazunu for about 12 million quid to Southampton. We sold Shea Charles for 10 million quid. We sold Edozie to them. We sold a lot of players. We sold Romeo Lavia to them, okay, from, I think it was it 12 million quid? So these players are virtually costing us nothing, and we're selling them on, and we're making a ton of money as profit in our accounts. Sometimes, like the Romeo Lavia incident, his sale, sometimes it comes back to bite you because he was sold on for about, 55 million quid to Chelsea. He was worth a lot more than 12 million quid after a year, but we could have bought him back, but we could only buy him back after 2 years. I think that was the deal we had with Southampton. Because Southampton, they don't want to buy a player, use him for a year, and then let the club, the selling club, buy him back after a year. They want to have enough time to get the benefit of having this player, nurturing him. I think what happened was he developed so quickly, we didn't anticipate that because we're not playing these kids. We didn't play Cole Palmer enough. So suddenly when they go somewhere else, they can develop really quickly. He's gone on. They've made a ton of money. I think we had a 20% sell-on clause. So we still made some money. We ended up with at least 20 million pounds from the sale of Lavia, which is actually good money. That's how City do it. And I would suspect that's how Newcastle could look at doing it themselves. Can they sell an academy product? Now, the issue with selling an academy product, fans don't tend to like that, especially if someone's come through the ranks from the age of 6 or 9 or whatever. They're 22, 23 years old, and you move them on. At City, we've come to accept it. We've accepted that players move on. We accepted, Sancho wanted to leave, but we accepted it. We accept that Cole Palmer eventually wanted to leave. They wouldn't let him go out on loan. So they said, you either stay or you leave. He wanted to play, so he left. It's happened for several years at City. So we accept this now. Newcastle, I think there'll be a bit of a backlash if they go down this route. The fans will have to accept it. Now, you could look at someone like Sean Longstaff, I think his name is Sean Longstaff, okay? Let's say he's worth 30, 40 million quid. Let's say he's worth 40 million quid. Let's say they sell him this summer and it goes in the accounts this year. Basically, they made a profit of 40 million quid. That is has a huge impact on the PSR rules. 40 million quid makes your accounts look much, much better. And I think Newcastle are going to have to get into the business, because it is business. Player trading is a business, and it's essential. All clubs do it to different extents. Liverpool had to sell Coutinho. Even the club size of Liverpool had to sell Coutinho so they could buy other players. Spurs sold Harry Kane for, 90, 100 million pounds. That allows them to go out and buy other players. So sometimes you have to cash in on your best players. I don't think Newcastle want to do that. The problem with cashing in on your best players, Southampton cashed in on their best players. Sadio Mane went to Liverpool. Virgil van Dijk went to Liverpool. Lallana went to Liverpool. Loads of players went to Liverpool. Nathaniel Klein went to Liverpool. Ricky Lambert went to Liverpool. They cashed in on some of their top stars. And in the end, it caught up with them because they got rid of their best players. So rather than have all these players at Southampton, they'd gone. So Southampton had to keep wheeling and dealing. And at some point, they made some bad decisions, some bad choices. They ended up getting relegated. It's cost them an arm and a leg. You keep yourself weak. Bayern do this to Dortmund in Germany all the time. They were taking their star players. So they took Lewandowski. They took Mats Hummels. Was it Goetze as well? They took 3 or 4 players. And they actually wait till it's the end of the contract. So they don't pay any money to Dortmund for them. They might pay 10 million quid to the player as a signing on bonus. But Dortmund don't get a penny out of this. So Dortmund are losing their best players to the team that's above them. How can you compete like that? It's very, very difficult. So that Southampton had that issue. They lost a lot of good players. And you can't push forward. So if Newcastle now sell Isak, I'd take it at City. Isak for 100 million. I'd definitely take him. But if they was to sell Isak or Guimaraes or Sven Botman or one of the other people coming through, the top players, that will push them back. That will hold them back. So it's easier to sell a young player. I wouldn't sell Miley. That would make the Tsunami absolutely. It wouldn't make them livid. It'd probably be a revolt up there. But you sell someone who's come through, but you think is not going to make it to the top. Okay, it's got potential or has got good value. So as I use the Sean Longstaff as an example, if he's worth 40 million, you sell him, you make a 40 million pound profit. That means you can actually go out and spend, if you want, you can go buy a player for 50 million, put him on a 5-year contract. The amortization is 10 million a year. If he's on a 10 million pound salary, okay, it's 200 grand a week. That's hitting you for 20 million quid in your accounts. You could get 2 players. You could get 2 players for 50 million quid, put them on 5-year contracts, pay them 10 million a year, and that's cost you, okay, 50 million quid each. That's 100 million. Divide by 5, 20 million a year, plus a salary, 20 million for the 2 players. It's equivalent to the 40 million profit you got on Sean Longstaff. That's one way of looking at it. That's one way of doing it. And I think that's the way approach Newcastle will take. I can see 1 or 2 of their academy products having to be sold, because Newcastle, I think, when City had their takeover from Sheikh Mansour, we spent a lot of money because FFP was going to come in. So we were front loading our project. We spent a lot of money in a very short space of time, made huge losses because we knew FFP was going to stop us doing that. Newcastle haven't had that opportunity, but they've probably, by the signs of it, spent beyond their means, and they haven't sold anybody. Certainly not of any note. Certainly not for any value. They've just sold Saint-Maximin, sold him 25 million to a Saudi club. Apart from that, they've not sold anybody for more than about 10 or 12 million quid. It's peanuts. It's peanuts, and that is not all profit. So they've not been doing this player trading in a way to make it positive for them. Whereas City have, I don't know what the numbers were last season. We might have hit 100 million in player trading. Obviously we had Mahrez going, who's a senior player. We made a ton of money out of him. We had Laporte leaving as well. Made a ton of money on him as well. So Newcastle haven't gone down this route yet, and I think they're going to have to do it, and they're going to have to do it very, very soon. Do I think Newcastle are going to have to sell one of their top players? I think they won't, because they won't get to where they want to be if you're selling your top players. The guys who are making it happen, Joe Linton, who I quite like, Isak, Guimaraes, Botman. You sell one of these, you're going backwards. You've got to keep these. So it's easy to sell one of your fringe players, one of your youngsters coming through, use that money to go and get into the market, because Newcastle are struggling at the moment. They're struggling for players, okay? I think they're going to have more problems because they overachieved last season, got a lot of money from the Champions League. They're going to be lucky to get into Europe this season. Very lucky where they are. I can't see them getting to the Champions League because City are on 40 points. I think Arsenal on 40 points. They're 3rd and 4th. Newcastle, I think, on 28. It's very hard to catch them. Spurs are 5th on 39. So they're still 11 points behind Spurs. And they've only got 18 games to go to catch them up. And I just don't see them, unless they put a wonderful run together, which they might do now that they're out of Europe. They've got time to focus on the league and have obviously not playing 2 games a week, and they can have a rest and during the week and work on the next league game rather than worrying about the Champions League. So that might assist them. That might help them. But catching Spurs, 11 points different. Catching City or Arsenal, 12 points different. And there's clubs in between as well. They're not all going to fall back. Someone's going to maintain a decent, consistent level of form. And so it's going to be very difficult. They might make the Europa Conference League or the Europa League if they're very lucky, if they win the FA Cup, for instance, get to Europa League. That will give them a reasonable return, but it's not the same as the Champions League. So in summary, I think Newcastle are going to have to sell. That's all the noise is coming out in the papers and from the manager as well, and the executives there. They're going to have to sell to be able to buy. And I think they're going to sell 1 or 2 youngsters. And they're going to have to do this every single season to make the finances work until they can consistently get in the Champions League. Once City got consistent in the Champions League, you know what your income is going to be. You know you're going to probably get it every year. And you can work on that. You've got more concrete numbers and you can plan. You can plan much better. Newcastle are in a difficult situation where then they're struggling to be able to plan because that bonus money from the Champions League, fantastic. They ain't going to get it this season or next season. So they're going to have to sell. I think they will. As I said, I think they'll sell some kids. They'll copy City's model. They'll copy Chelsea's model. You have to. You have to do it. You know, all the clubs are doing this wheeling and dealing. Some do it better than others. Look at Brighton. And some do it worse than others. Look at Everton. You just got to get it right, and you've got to hope you get it right. And for Newcastle's sake, I hope they get it right, because I think it's, as I said at the top of the show, FFP is a con. It's unfair. It's not to protect the little clubs. It's to protect the status quo. And the big clubs want to keep everybody down. They don't want challenges to their wealth and power and winning trophy abilities. They want to keep things as they are. They hate City being there. They hate Chelsea being there. They would hate Newcastle being there. They hate Aston Villa. They don't want, your big clubs like your Liverpools and Man Uniteds and Arsenals and Spurs. They don't want competition. I suppose City are the same. We don't want competition because now we're at the top table. We don't want it either. But it's coming. And it will be interesting to see eventually if someone takes either UEFA's FFP to court or the Premier League's PSR to court. Because if Everton get relegated this season because they got docked 10 points, they ain't going to take that lightly. They ain't going to take that quietly. They ain't going to take that sitting down. I'm sure they're going to challenge it and go through court if they have to. And that will mess up everything for the Premier League because it won't be a short case. And if they win, Premier League are going to get absolutely battered because Everton will want their money back. It's a whole new can of worms if Everton get relegated and then challenge us in the courts. But guys, that's a story for another day. Thanks for joining me. I know it's been a bit of a ramble, but hopefully if you've enjoyed what you've seen, give us a thumbs up, give us a follow, hit that bell icon so you're notified as soon as new videos come out. And no doubt we'll be back at this talking about finances again in the next few weeks, probably towards the end of the transfer window, where I'm pretty sure City ain't going to buy anybody of any note. And we'll get back to you and keep talking finances throughout the year. Guys, take it easy, have fun, enjoy your games this weekend, and we'll see you around Blues.